Okay, so in the last class, we started with the various issues of ethics. So there were a few examples which were the ethical dilemmas that you and I would be facing when we are at work or any time that we are in a certain context. Okay, so these are a few aspects that we need to uphold at all times, right? Be it as individuals or be it as individuals working in a group, or be it, if it is an organization, and then if it's a society at large, these are paramount and these are universal values, right? Irrespective of whichever organization or which industry you work, irrespective of which country you work, all of these are absolutely essential, and this needs to be upheld at all times. So these are the ethical aspects. So we were in line with a few discussions in the last class. So if you remember, we were asking questions and trying to see, what is your take on all of this. So one aspect of central to ethics is transparency, and that is one thing that we often keep asking and expecting from anybody that we want to have a sort of an interaction with, or anybody with whom we have certain business dealings as such. It could also be very important when it comes to employer-employee relationships, right? So whenever we talk about employer-employee relationships too, this is really, really very important, because every matter that we are discussing needs to be in black and white. Everything needs to be disclosed, and everybody should be on the same page. So that is what we basically understand. So employees often have issues with their organizations when organizations take or make decisions that are contrary to something that was not stated in the terms of contract, or it was not there in the manual. So generally that's where we get a little annoyed, and then we go back to our businesses and we ask these questions as to why such a kind of decision was taken. So it's always better that everything is spoken about, everything is discussed, everything is in black and white, right? So one good piece of advice for all of you is, make sure any interaction that you have with any interaction that you have professionally, be it with your employers, your team leaders, or anybody for that matter, it's always very important that any professional business dealing or any sort of an interaction that you have which is pertaining to your job and your role and your responsibility, right? It could include taking orders and instructions or giving orders and instructions. It is always better that you do that in writing, right? Orally over a phone, you can have a discussion. It's also very important during these times when we're doing everything online. So a lot of times we could be talking over a phone, and if later on, if certain material evidence is required, to find out about something, or to go back and verify to what was told, or somebody could deny, your employer could deny and say that I never gave so and so this instruction and never told them to do anything. So in these cases, having something in writing, it could be an email form or it could be in text form. It's always better that you have all communication written. You can always have a discussion and chat over phone, but make sure at the end of it, you tell, it is always better that why don't you send me an email over it? Because it's always good that you can always show this as a point of evidence if you have to defend yourself anywhere. Or it's also nice for you to go back to it at some point of time to refer to some more details if you want to get some more clarity. So transparency in dealings is very, very important. So let's keep that there. The second point that we were looking at is to make sure that we are in a responsible position and we are answerable to stakeholders. So that is why in the last class I said we are in a role of fiduciaries, right? Fiduciaries are those who are vested with the responsibility to execute a certain task or a certain responsibility. So if you and I are in organizations that we work in, the employers have chosen us over rest of the others who applied for the job to be able and they found us to be the best fit or the best match for doing the job. And then we are vested with a role, we are vested with a responsibility, and they've given us autonomy, they've given us freedom, they've also given us resources. And it's very important that we execute, we use all of this to make sure that the goals of the objectives of our job and the goals of the organization are fulfilled. So at any given point of time, if you realize that that trusted position in which you are placed in, if that is questioned, or if you are expected to act in a certain manner, like for example giving a bribe or taking a bribe, or trying to show favoritism to some other individuals within the organization so that you could get a better advantage or anything. Any of those things that goes in contrary, and if you feel that it's not easy for you to make those decisions, then that's where your fiduciary position is questioned. And it's always going to come up at any given point of time when when you do something unethical, or if there is something that goes wrong from your job, and if you are questioned, then the question definitely is going to be asked about you being in a responsible position as to how you could go ahead and do that. So that's why we've seen examples of all those individuals who've been in very responsible positions, but they've acted irresponsibly, they've acted out of their own selfishness, acted out of their own greed, and that is why they find themselves in the lowest position today. So it's a fiduciary responsibility. So if at all you're in a dilemma, right, you're in a fiduciary position, if at all you're in a dilemma, you do not know whether to take a decision, whether to say yes or no, or how to go about, it's always better that you escalate the matter to your higher up. Go and present the case to them and tell them, see, this is what is happening right now, this is what I'm expected to this is what is the kind of pressure that I'm getting, or this is the kind of request that is placed. How do you want me to handle this? So it's always better that you take it to the higher ups, because generally one thing that happens, one question that is often asked by your employers is, why did you bring it to my notice? If it was so difficult, or if you were in that difficult situation, you should have brought it to our notice and we would have told you what to do. So why did you go ahead and take that decision? So, to avoid such uncomfortable scenarios, it's always better that you play a role that is a lot more easy. It's always nice to also be diplomatic in these ends, to also keep everybody in the loop of things so that they are aware and they can also give you some fine advices on how to handle a dilemma. Dignity is very important. Okay, this is the third point that we were discussing. So if you all have anything to state here, so you can always come back, right? So dignity and respect for other individuals, freedom, space, privacy is very important. So this is one area where we often tend to see the power play, the superior and subordinate relationship that we generally are into. When we do our jobs, we're always in a position of a superior and a subordinate. So what is the extent to which a superior uses his power? And to what are all the various things that he or she could go about while using or exercising power? So just because somebody is a dependent, somebody is a subordinate working under you, has to come back to you and report to you. So, how is this manipulated? How is this power position manipulated, or how is power misused at a lot of times to get some personal favors, and to also find some very sadistic pleasure in ill-treating somebody or making them to work for longer hours just because you want to prove that you're their boss and you're my subordinate. You're supposed to do what I asked you to do. So when we do not look into the dignity of another individual, just like how you would expect others to treat you with the same dignity, that is the same dignity that you need to also accord irrespective of who that person is. That person could be a security guard at your gate, that person could be an office boy, that person could just be an intern who is coming in and doing a 3-month project in your organization. So how you treat them it goes a long way. Goes a long way in representing you as a person and also representing your organization that you look at. So this is one case that we have. So what should I do when consulting for a tobacco company which still illegally permits smoking in offices? When I want to respect the culture of the client firm, but concerned about my team's health while surrounded by smoke. So here you have a case of a consulting company, and you have members of these company who are smoking in those areas where you have designated signs telling them that this is a no smoking area. Right, a lot of change has come about. So today you have very designated spaces. There are smoke zones that you will see in offices, or very often people step out. Earlier it never used to be like that. So people could smoke around anywhere in the office. So that was the kind of culture that was there to show that you are in business, you are an executive. So smoking was also a part of was like a prop if you were in business or to show that you're very tensed and things like that. But after smoking has been banned in public places, and then also organizations very strictly following it, but still it does happen. So how do you stop somebody from not smoking? It could be your boss, it could be a boss or your team leader, who's smoking, and he's called for a meeting, then he takes out a cigarette and then he starts smoking, which you may dislike. So how do you handle this kind of a situation? Right? Any answers there? How would you handle this? Or if you have any personal instances of where you feel a little undignified because somebody is not respecting, respecting your space, that you do not want uh, to be affected by the person who's smoking there. Any personal instances or anything, we can request that person to stop. Okay, but how often do subordinates tell the boss? So very often we have this in mind, saying that yes, he or she is my boss, so how can I tell them? Okay, and how do they take it also? Because generally, in our culture, we see that those in power and position do not want to be instructed from their juniors, so it's not taken well, unlike the way it is in the West. See, I mean, if it is in the West, there people equality is a lot more common there. So you don't see unequal positions. So we call this as power distance. In collectivist cultures like India and many of the Asian countries, we have something called a power distance, which means somebody is known, or somebody is known to be more powerful because of the distance that they have, because of the power or the position that they hold. So because of which they tend to maintain that distance. You're always trying to communicate and say, I am your boss. So that could be through physical layouts, where you say this is the designated place for the boss. This is where the boss sits, or this is the boss's office, or you would say this is where the boss parks his car. Nobody else can park there. So it's like that. So people in power tend to use their positions to maintain distance, to often communicate through tangible and intangible ways that they are the bosses. So generally, in collectivist cultures, when power distance between the superior and the subordinate is very high or wide, we generally tend to think twice before we object. Whereas in countries, right, especially in the US and many other European countries, these are countries where the power distance is very low, which means people are known for the jobs that they do and not because of the positions that they hold. That is why you'll see a lot of difference in bosses in US organizations, or you will see that in experience in many of our multinational companies. The boss is very simple, right? So you'll say he's the CEO of the organization, but he very hardly will be, I mean, you will not see them in a blue suit and always like that, like how you see Indian CEOs and how you see Indian leaders as such, right? So in US and in the West, in many other Western countries, so the boss will be like a commoner. He will be wearing clothes very similar to you, and he'll be sitting in places where you sit. There is no separate demarcated areas to say this is where the boss will sit or this is where the boss will park the car. Nothing of the sort. He's just like a commoner because he wants to show to everybody. I mean, it's the culture of the country and also culture of the organization to show that I'm one among the equals. So in those kind of countries and cultures and organizations where power distance is very low, it's very free. You will not think what you will not. It will not even cross your mind to say, what if I tell my boss, or what if I ask him not to smoke? It's quite there. And at the moment you say, that's when they realize, and they would immediately say, I'm really sorry, I was not aware. And then they could just put the cigarette down and profusively apologize too. So, but it's very rare that you will see that in cultures like ours. So this is very important. We always have to be mindful of it. Okay, I've got two. I've got one. Yeah, Sneha S has put in a response. Thomas Sibis have taken that you will request them to stop. So I've never come across such a scenario, but yes, if I do, then I would mention to my boss that I'm uncomfortable, and we can have the meeting later when he or she is done. So we'd want to follow quality. So that's good. So if you feel that it is uncomfortable, it's always you should always put it across. But it's very important, especially in as I said, in power distance countries like ours, bosses don't usually like. So, but there is always a manner in which you can always speak to them. So lower your tone and talk to them a little more politely, and then you will be able to know that that they will be able to accept that answer. Okay, so that's a very important thing. So this is just one instance about smoking, but it could also be about entering into somebody's work area without their permission, right? So that could be there. So private spaces, and also sometimes getting too close to people, right? So always also getting close, just because you are their boss or you're their team leader, getting too close, which can make that person feel very uncomfortable, or touching people when you're speaking, because you're the boss. So a lot of times it goes into people's head. Power sometimes is extremely toxic. Sometimes it can make you do things that you don't even will, I mean, in ordinary circumstances you will not do. So it's very important that you keep this in mind. Other people's health, concern for other people's safety, concerns for other people's privacy, concerns for other people's rights. That it is like, for example, when a subordinate says, "Sir, can I know something about this?" or "Can I know why I was not given this responsibility?" So it's the right of that individual to know why a certain decision was taken where this person was not included, or why this person did not get that responsibility. So you cannot say, no, it's the management's decision. So generally we give excuses like that. But it's the right of that individual. Everybody is somebody who's working in your organization, on whom a certain decision is going to be taken and applied. And if that person is going to be affected by it, so definitely they would want to know why. And this can happen around performance appraisals, this can happen around increments, this can happen around bonuses that are issued. So it could happen around any of these instances where people, where employees would want to know the reason behind it. So that's where that point of transparency also comes into picture. So let's look at trust and reliability. So keeping promises, agreements, and other commitments, extremely, extremely important. So trust relates to predictability and the efficiency in business. So we all understand that that everybody, so superior subordinates, must be able to work in a trustworthy manner, and there should be equal confidence in the working patterns of each other. Along with that, several other businesses or people who are part of our supply chain would want to do business with only those who want to keep promises, those businesses who are very serious about the tasks that they do, the responsibilities that they take up. And trust is very important. So we need to often do business with those who are very reliable, because that's where the success of my organization and the success of those organizations will also lie, right? So very important. So whenever there is a breach of trust, right? Whenever there is a breach of trust, or whenever there is a breach of contract, is where the relationship breaks down. And then that could give rise to a lot of things. So what does this mean? Breach of trust and breach of contract will happen when one party tends to do something which is not part of the contract, which is not part of the terms and conditions, which is not part of the agreement, and then behaves in a manner that breaches the trust of that individual or that organization. So here's an instance. Do I back out of an employment contract I just signed with one employer, but haven't started yet, to take an offer from other employer who is paying me more? So this could happen when you simultaneously attend interviews and you've already signed the employment contract, which means you've committed, orally committed, though the job has not started. But the second company that you tried has called you back and said that you're appointed. So, and they're also agreeing to pay you a little more. So what do you do in this instance? You made a commitment, an oral commitment to the first organization. So now your mind tells you that you want to take up the second organization because the salary is more. So how do you handle this? How will you handle it? Any answers there? How would you, what would you do if you're in a situation like this? You can unmute and answer, or you can put it in the chat. So what would you do? You've already committed and signed the employment contract in one organization, and then you've got offers from another organization where they pay you more. Okay, choose the best company, which is best for my career. Okay, Anudeep says that, but you already committed there.
Sir, hello?
Yeah. Go on, Arti. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Yeah, yes, sir. Sir, actually, a person with ethics and value will definitely not do that, sir. So, one who is
Okay.
committed to his work, he'll definitely give his 100% in helping out this employer only,
Okay.
irrespective of money or salary, whatever.
Okay. Somebody who's ethical will say that since I've committed, I'm going there. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Uh, will you try speaking to the first employer to whom you've committed as a courtesy? Your mind is telling you that you should take this up because money is very important for you. So you're telling, will you call that first employer and tell them that I've got this offer because I was simultaneously doing it. So I want to, I'd be more happy if I take that offer up because I need that extra salary. If you can give me that extra money, then I would work with you. So will you call as a courtesy? Okay, Andrew says, I will show them the second offer and tell them, so between the two, I will choose the one who pays me more. So if you can give me the same, then I would take that offer up. Okay. Okay. Yes, I would check with the first employer if they are ready to pay that much. Okay. So you will ask them, look, I've got this offer also. But you've committed. So what about the commitment? So they may ask you, you've committed. So how can you go back on it? Because we've frozen on this job. Otherwise, I had some 4 or 5 candidates. If you weren't interested, you could have told me earlier itself because I've lost some of the best candidates who are after you. So it's actually a loss for the company also when you look at it, because they miss out on the candidate because they've decided on you. So let's say, for example, this is something that has happened almost 1 month ago. So there's a 30-day, you've signed 30 days before, right? And but the project has not started, the job has not yet begun. Meanwhile, you've got this offer from another organization. So that's a fairly good. So if it's something that happens in just 2 3 days, then you can always immediately tell. Employer also wouldn't have, will always have that option of looking back at the, second and the third best candidates. But if it's a fairly long period of time, like say like 30 days, then the employer is at loss because he's got to go back again and then call up those people, and some of them could have taken up jobs. So in that case, what would you do, right? So Thomas Sibi says, yeah, be honest with the organization who initially offered, and if they are fine with a raise, we'll stick on it. If not, switch on mutual understanding. Okay, so that's also another possibility, but it's always uh, better that you communicate, right? So whether you're going to continue with that previous employer, or whether you're going to ask for an extra raise equal to what the other organization is offering, but it's always better that you communicate, because the employer also is aware that you may not be working with them, and then will also give the employer enough time to look for the second or the third candidate who could eventually replace you. So it's always important that you inform. So that's there. I mean, the employer could get angry, the employer could get upset, but doesn't matter. But you've done the right thing. So don't worry about reactions. Very often we are scared about reactions, but we don't give importance to what you feel post you've taken such a kind of a decision. So that's a little hard, but you should be able to do that. Okay. Sometimes it's okay to breach ethics. That's what Sneha again puts it in the chat. She says, since we are in a harsh world, okay, when uh, when it is the organization in our situation, they're also going to do the best. Okay, so sometimes we take comfort in such kind of very generalized aspects. So it says everybody is doing this, so why only me, or why should I alone be ethical? Like when you say harsh world, it's a very subjective, generalized understanding. So uh, will we tend to do that? See, the question of ethics is often judged on this parameter. Very often people who do something unethical will often ask this question and say, I'm not the only guy who's doing this. I'm not the only person who's unethical. I'm not the only person who's taking a bribe or paying a bribe. I'm not the only person who's done this. There have been so many others who've done this. It's quite normal, right? But this cannot help, because ultimately when we look at it, it is very often your own ethical standpoint. your own ethical standpoint, that is going to make the difference. So one individual and one ethical act can make a difference. So sometimes, see, that's also something that will cloud your mind, and that will also play when you are trying to be that ethical person, and you want to act in a manner that's very right for you. Okay, let's look at, is it acceptable to delay sending reports to weekly sales to our inventory finance company so that we could leverage one more day of cash flow to pay for the inventory? Delaying. So these are delay tactics, not just in this instance, but generally delaying it will give you that extra time, because again, not keeping commitments, right? So when you breach deadline or you get that extra time, you get, I mean, when you breach that deadline, you get that extra time with which you can, finish up your work. That's there. And uh, and sometimes it could also help you, it could also give you um, that extra time or that extra leverage, right? So that's there. So a little bit of delay tactics will also try to sometimes give you some sort of an advantage. So it depends on different kinds of scenarios, right? So that's there. So trust and reliability, keeping promises, agreements, commitments are also very important ethical acts. Okay, let's look at the next one. Fairness. We've already dealt with fairness, which is also synonymous with justice. I spoke about 4 forms of justice: distributive justice, procedural justice, interpersonal justice, and informational justice. So fairness is just being fair to all the parties. So I have 2 instances here. Do I recommend that a manager be made redundant even though I have come to know him personally and know that it will cause him hardship? Okay, sometimes when you have to take a decision of laying off somebody or asking somebody to quit, and if your management has decided to remove that person from job or to sack that person, whereas you know that person because that person is your friend or you know him personally and you know that he's going through very difficult and hard times. So would you go and talk to your management and ask for that person to be given extra?
ಈ ದೇಶ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಅದು ಆಯ್ತು ನಾನು ತಳ್ಳೇದಲ್ಲ ಕೊಡುಕಿ ನನಗೆ ಸೇರು ಈ ದೇಶ ನನ್ನ ದೇಶ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ
1027. Okay. Okay, so would we do something like that? Or sometimes it could also happen. I mean, you could be that person who's there in that position to take that decision, and you know that your subordinate or somebody in your team is going through real difficulties and they desperately need this job. So how will you look at it? So the personal and the professional, agenda will come for a clash. So as a person, will you be, will you sympathize with that person? Or if you say professionally, you would say, I'm only doing this job, so I'm supposed to be doing that. I cannot take personal, I cannot show personal favors, or I cannot be very sympathetic to individuals like that. Right. So that's one instance where, yeah, how will you do that? Because this personal and professional is one area that you will generally see a lot of clash. What your mind tells you to do and what your heart tells you to do. So where will you, which one will you listen to? Some answers there. What will you do in a situation like that? Will you help that person out and give him that extra time? Or will you think that if I continue to do this with one person, I'll have to do it with everybody, and ultimately it is the organization that's going to suffer? Any answers there? All right, let me ask somebody. Okay, Janita, if you can hear me. Janita, can you hear me? Okay, Sharath. Sharath S. Sharath, can you hear me? Okay, Vinod. Vishnu Vinod.
Hello?
Okay, okay, Sharath, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sharath, what would you do? Personal and professional is at a clash.
I'm not sure.
What will you do? Will you help that person because you know that person is going through a little difficulty? You don't want that person to be sacked? Or are you going to say, I'm just doing my job, so I'm supposed to sack?
We both, a little of both.
Okay, little of both. So how will you explain that?
Uh, I'm not sure about that. But it's like not too professionally, but not too casually. Lead them in the right path, just like how parents do.
Okay, okay. So give that person a little bit of extra time and tell him that, look, I'm giving you another 1 month to improve your performance. Post that, I will have to take a hard decision.
Yes.
Okay. So you'll try giving a chance. Okay. So it's important. Okay. Sometimes a mix of both is good because certain professional decisions can be very harsh, but it's always important that you give that little chance or one bit of little leeway to that individual so that person is sometimes mentally prepared. So if you give that person a chance, he might either put an extra effort and try to save his job and also come out of that financial difficulty that he's in. And if he's unable to make it, he would have he would have made up his mind, so he knows that he's not done enough, so he might be losing the job, so he might mentally be prepared to face that kind of a consequence. So it's always important that you do that. So that's where that point of transparency also comes in, because it's always important that you put down the reasons where somebody can be sacked, or the procedure that will be taken if for somebody to be sacked, or what is that level below which you will consider employees to be redundant and then put them on the layoff list. So you could be doing that. Okay, so Thomas Sibi again puts in on the chat, so do what is right and be truthful to yourself. A piece of advice will always be better than an immediate action. Yes, so it's always a mix of, personally trying to also look at the personal side of it, and also professionally try to give that person a little leeway to take some decision there. Okay, it always helps, right? Okay. So what should I do when my manager wants me to inaugurate a new plan for customers without including a safety check to ensure that customers are not charged monthly for something which they believe to be a one-time charge? Sometimes this happens when we look at marketing and other kind of promotions and offers that we give. A lot of it is has a hidden agenda. What the customer will tend to read and understand, and when they come in, there'll always be a catch with which we will try to uh, trap the customer. So if we are not disclosing things very clearly, right? So that's also there in marketing communication. So we will be doing that, taking customers for a ride, overhyping things, and sometimes misleading them with certain communication and with some offer messages, which which is not in reality, it is not true. So sometimes that also is there. So that's also can be an instance where we are not fair. So here we're not just talking about fairness with employees, we're talking about fairness with almost anybody that we are trying to deal with. So when we look at marketing, sales and marketing, that's where we will take up issues more specific to customers as such. Okay, so do I overload retailers with our product in order to meet sales target and secure bonuses? So sometimes that in the supply chain and the distribution channel also, there's severe pressure on the retailer to sell more quantity of a particular brand or a product of a particular company because of the promise of an extra bonus. So automatically what happens is the bullwhip effect is going to take place. The retailers are going to pressurize their sales teams and sales teams will pressurize sales executives and put up unrealistic targets. So when unrealistic targets are put up by hook or crook, if it has been told that somehow you have to sell, doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter, let's see, all that we'll look after when there are issues. So that is when sometimes sales executives are also under tremendous pressure. So they go about using shortcuts in selling, tell a lot of things, promise a lot of things, push the product somehow. So that's where they put themselves into trouble later on when customers come back with complaints regarding products. So this is there. So we saw this as one of those issues. Unrealistic targets or unrealistic objectives sometimes can make and lead people to act in an unethical manner. Now, if you're looking at retailers also, one good instance of retailers is retailers are generally those final sellers who stock not just one company's brand, but they will stock many other companies' brands. So here the retailer is supposed to make sure that all the goods under his banner will sell. But here retailers will concentrate only on those retailers, on selling those brands which offer higher bonuses compared to those retailers, manufacturers who give them less margins or who do not have performance bonus attached to it. So sometimes you are favoring there because you have the attraction of a higher bonus as a retailer. And even as a salesperson, you could be actually selling a product which is not so good to a customer because you're getting a big bonus. You get that performance incentive when you sell this particular brand of a company because their incentives are much higher than the incentives offered by other companies which also are selling products which you have to sell. So it's there. So it's money, and that extra incentive driven sometimes will also make us sell or force us to sell defective products to customers, and then we might actually mislead them. So fairness point. Loyalty. So are we looking at employees, employer-employee commitment, loyalty, sticking onto a job, sticking onto promises, right? So after I discover I'm going to be laid off, is it defensible to be unhelpful to the individuals who are taking your job and spend time at work looking for a new job? So generally this happens when individuals are serving their notice period. So once you decided to resign and you put in your papers, so they put you on a 30-month service notice. So you're there. So when you're serving that time, generally the new incumbent also comes in. So whoever is going to replace you will also come in, and your job is to train that person in the next 30 days before you leave. So when you are doing this, are you very sincere in training that individual, or are you sincere in doing that job, or are you trying to just be very indifferent, or do you tend to just be cold because the organization is going to pay you during the notice period? Also, the organization is paying you the salary, right? So are you going to say now that they have laid off, or now they have decided to, now that I've left my job, so why should I be so very serious and start using all that office time and office resources to look for a new job? So how sincere are you at your personal front, and how sincere are you in doing your job, in training that new incumbent who's going to replace you, is also going to be a big question on the ethical front. So how can I help? This is a certain instance again. How can I help our 100 Bangladeshi employees whom I find out will be let go within the following year without transgressing the confidentiality of this information? So this is in the case of migrant employees who've come in, and if they've been working, and if your organization comes out with a policy stating that these individuals will have to be sacked or will have to be sent off. So you get this information priorly, that in the next 2 months, after 2 months, these 100 employees from this particular country will be asked to leave, right? But you keep that confidential without telling them, and they go on continuing to work for the next 2 months, happy that they have a job and happy that they have a salary. So sometimes it could hurt you. Also, sometimes people go through a severe personal stress when they know that they are willfully acting in a manner that they could have possibly helped that individual. We have a whole whole lot of fellows on the road.
நல்லா இருக்கு.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Okay, so that's a case of loyalty sometimes. So that's also another issue that we could look at. Okay, I've got a test case. So I can probably expect some answers here. Okay, so the vice president of marketing of a major brewing company is aware of that the college students account for a large proportion of sales of beer, and that people of this age category form loyalties to a particular brand of beer. So this is a case where these brewery companies, right, or alcohol companies target youngsters. The most attractive age group for this particular, especially for alcohol and especially for beer in that category, is that age group from 14 to 25. And these early and legally they are not supposed to be sold, or they're not supposed to be bought unless and until they are 18 years of age. So you will see those boards, but still a lot of it gets sold. So willfully, so it could be retailers selling to somebody who's underage. So if you're the vice president of marketing and then you feel that targeting beer to this particular segment of school going children, in +1 and +2 and that group is a very attractive group, and they actually and you target them because maximum sales could come. So the VP is personally uncomfortable with the promotional gimmicks. So here the vice president feels, because if you have children of the same age, right? So you will definitely feel this more personal, because you would not want beer to be offered to your kids and then you're okay with offering it to kids of your children's age, right? So the VP is personally uncomfortable with the promotional gimmicks of their competitors to encourage drinking on campuses. So let's say the competitor of this company is trying to promote on campuses. They are sponsoring their college fests and sponsoring events. They are opening contests outside, right? So all this happens, though legally these are not supposed to be done. So alcohol and tobacco related advertisements, publicity and promotion material is banned. Absolutely. That is why you don't see liquor advertisements and liquor advertisements, as well as advertisements for tobacco related products on television or in newspapers. It used to happen earlier, but now it does not happen. But these companies have found another form. They found out another way by which they go about promoting. So we call these as surrogate advertisements. So surrogate advertisements, you can see that for Royal Stag, you can see that for Bacardi, and they will say they promote Bacardi, and you will see an advertisement, then you will say cassettes and CDs at the bottom of it, right? So this is called surrogate advertisement. Surrogate advertisement itself is unethical. And then here you have a competitor trying to promote. As a VP, you are uncomfortable targeting or selling products to, selling beer to this category of youngsters. But your competitor is aggressively promoting it on campuses. Now, should you also do the same thing? And because of that aggressive promotion, the competitor is gaining. Competitor's beer brand is increasing in terms of sales. So you are also advised to take that decision. So you're in a personal dilemma here. First of all, you're uncomfortable promoting or selling these products to this group of youngsters. That's on one end. On the other end, you are also in a dilemma because you don't know whether to match that aggressive competition, aggressive advertising offered by your nearest competitor. So what would you do in this case if you're the VP? Anybody there? Okay, let's look. So companies should have a sense of social responsibility, though the ultimate aim is profit. Okay, yes, that's there. So personal responsibility, companies, that social responsibility should be there. So though profits are going to be the end result, but it's also very important we choose the right means. What is the manner and the means in which we are going to, make profits is very important. Organizations can also promote in a responsible, yes. I mean, though these are very harmful products, but you could always promote them in a very responsible and ethical manner and be very strict. Be strict to your retailers and sellers, and also have some surprise checks to find out that they don't sell to youngsters. If youngsters are coming on their own, they could do that, but there is no need for aggressive advertisements as such, right? So that's one way you could be very ethical and responsible. Try and influence the board of members to ensure this promotion is not done in colleges. Okay, so we'll say, okay, because the competitor is doing it, we would not want to go ahead with it, because in the long run, so it's not just the users who are doing this. Let's say, for example, you have this competitor B who's aggressively promoting, so their sales is going up, and you are deciding not to promote in college campuses because you personally don't want to do it, nor do you want this to be the target from which you earn profits. Okay. Now here it's not just about the sales. You have an entire society sitting and watching. And if there could be people, there could be stakeholders in society who could see that company B is aggressively promoting and you are refraining from doing it. So this act of you refraining and ensuring that you are willing to forego profits is going to actually earn some brownie points, and it's going to give you something called a positive publicity. You earn positive publicity by not doing this at all. So as a company, the press could write about it, or there could be reviews where companies, stakeholders or anybody in society could appreciate and say that, this is a company that decided not to do it. And that was a very responsible and a very ethical kind of a stand. So that's there. So promote more on the addiction problem and mental health of the students. Okay, that's there. So one good company that very often was in a very difficult and a very tight spot was ITC, right? ITC itself was a tobacco company, and their mainstream profits, almost 70% of their revenues came from the sales of tobacco, because they are the largest conglomerates and they hold multiple brands of selling. But over the years, what ITC has done, ITC has diversified. ITC has diversified, and today ITC is known as a food and beverage company that offers products not just for smokers, but offers products for everybody in the family. And slowly they are trying to reduce their dependency on revenues that come from ITC, revenues that come from the sales of cigarettes. So they are just selling it, and not doing anything with respect to promoting it or anything like that, because only those who are addicted to the habit go, and there is nothing that ITC tends to do. Like the way you see an Ashirwad advertisement or any other products of ITC being aggressively advertised in the FMCG platform, you will not see ITC doing this at all. So these are just promotions, and these are products that just sell, and ITC would one day wind up this business when the government collectively decides that they want to absolutely ban the manufacture and the distribution of cigarettes. So until that time, you will have this company going ahead, but they are very responsibly trying to reduce the dependency of revenues that come from cigarettes. Okay, so that could be, so it's a personal stand again. So what would you do? That's also very, very important. So we could be in instances like this. So in all of this, if you see business values and principles, they will have no meaning unless and until it is put to effect. So you can believe in a lot of things. You can have a lot of morals, you can have a lot of values, you can have all of this. But if you don't use it in an ethical dilemma, or if you don't use it in a context where you are expected to act in an ethical manner, none of this is going to matter. And regretting something that you shouldn't have done, or in hindsight, when you grow older or years later, when you go back and reflect on your life and you say, this is one bad thing that I did, I should have been very careful, I shouldn't have done. So sometimes certain actions will continue to haunt you through your lives. If it takes the life of somebody, or if it endangers certain people in society, and it's because of your decision, because you were very hard up and you did not act in an ethical manner, so it's going to haunt you. So if you want to not overcome, or if you want to not face some sort of regrets like that later on in your life, it's always important that you follow ethics and values. So what are the things that you could do? So which is get real. It's not just about you thinking and talking about ethics. It's always important that you're always very conscious and you're always looking forward for dilemmas and instances where you can act in an ethical manner and set an example for anybody who sees you, because that's the way it works. You cannot always say, I am the only individual, but it always takes one individual to bring about a change. And if you are able to do that very bravely and take that decision and stick to your ethical stand, then you will have more people who will follow you. Yeah, I mean, you will have fence sitters, as we call people who are in that 50-50 position, sitting on the fence, not knowing what to do. So fence sitters will have somebody as a role model. They could probably look at you and say, okay, here is somebody who's done it. When so and so has done it, I will also do it, or I will join that individual and I will also support what that person does. So this is how you tend to do it, right? So deliberating on it is not going to help. When you believe in a moral, when you believe in a value, when you believe in a principle, if you get an opportunity, act. Even if you are alone, or even if you are in a minority, does not matter. Get real and act. So putting ethics before profits is very important, because in the long run, you're going to be recognized for what you did. ITC, for example, is going to definitely take a big chunk. That is the reason why people today have so much of that particular brand has so much of brand equity. The reason is because they acted in an ethical manner, understanding that the times have changed. Post 2000, ITC decided that the society is changing, people's mindset is changing, and then cigarettes are causing a lot of harm. And they were able to study a lot of foreign companies like Marlboro, brands like Marlboro, and looked at what happened in the US for Philip Morris and companies like that, which were sued by those who died out of lung cancer, affected by continuous use of tobacco products and smoking. So they understood that what is happening in the US and in European countries, and the same kind of response will come to India in sooner or no time. So they decided that it's important for ITC. If ITC has to survive, then they have to diversify. And that's the reason why they took a very brave and a paradigm shift to move into the food and beverage company. And today, their dependency, as I said, on the revenues from the sale of cigarettes has drastically come down. So putting ethics before profit is very important, because any organization that is acting in a very socially responsible, conscious manner, keeping in mind the health of the individuals in society, is the one that will be respected for what they do. So linking ethics with behavior is absolutely necessary. As I said, it's not just about you talking and thinking about ethics, but it's also, when you're given an opportunity, it's always important that you behave, you show people, what it is to be ethical. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of courage, but you should fear your conscience more than anything and anybody else. So do not worry about what anybody says. Ultimately, they will realize what they're doing is wrong. But if you are able to, satisfy your conscience and you believe that, I did the right thing in this situation, then that's perfect. And even if you lose this job and you go to another organization and you tell them that this is exactly why I was sacked, then those companies will definitely be able to accept you if they are ethical. So you will find a perfect match of an ethical company where you've taken a stand. It's not that the world is really bad. It's not that all companies are unethical and nobody's going to hire you. It is definitely not that case. It's not that as bad as the way we sometimes generalize. So you will always find good companies always looking for good employees in the in the market. So business or business is business, but business or business is also ethical business. It's not just about what matters. It's not profit at the end of the day. It is about the means. What is the means and the methods that you've used and employed to earn profits is what's going to, give you that good name in society, and that brand equity, and that is going to bring in a lot of loyalty, and you will have some good customer base that you will build in the long run. So it's like the slow and steady wins the race. So it's often like that. So those who are unethical will reach their targets very easily. They will become very rich companies, but their unethical acts will always catch them up. You cannot hide for a long time. You cannot prove pretense for a long time. You will always be called out. You will always be caught, and that's the end of it. So they'll fall like a pack of cards. But those who are slow and those who adopt ethical means and use means that are very, very good enough, those are the organizations that will survive in the long run. Okay, so that's how we go about. So some of the ingredients for being very successful or to build ethical organizations, first is leadership. And the leadership will always come from the individual. Whether it's you as an executive, whether you're working at a mid-level as a manager, or you're working at the strategic level as a leader, making decisions, setting examples is what is going to make anything and everything go in that ethical manner. So leading by example is more important. So leadership, if the leadership of the organization is very strong and they follow a zero tolerance towards unethical instances and actions, then that is definitely going to be accepted and adopted by everybody within the organization. And there should always be consistency between what is spoken and what we do. Words and behavior must always be matching. Preaching and practicing must always go hand in hand. So that's where morals, values, principles, ethics are good to speak, are good to hear, but very difficult to follow. But we must put that strong effort and courage to make sure that we are able to bridge that balance between preaching and practicing. And be very fair, as I said, in all treating anything and everything, and be very open about talking about ethics and values. The more you talk about ethics and values, the more you are using a public forum, you're using your organizational forums to talk about this. Indirectly, you are sending out a message to all your employees that acting in an ethical manner is accepted and it is endorsed and appreciated in the organization. That's one thing. Secondly, if you have fence sitters who are not sure whether to be ethical or not to be ethical, will get out a clear message saying that, yes, this is an organization when it talks openly about acting in an ethical manner. It is a message for us that, yes, if we act in an ethical manner, we will definitely gain support from the organization and from the leaders of this organization. So that is definitely going to make people, you will have more people working towards acting in an ethical manner. And be very just in whatever you distribute. This talks about distributive justice. And salaries, wages, rewards, responsibilities, performance appraisals, incentives, allowances. Make sure that you're very fair, and it should be open, communicated, and it should be transparent. And that's how you bring about fairness in small ways. And then your organization must be value driven. So why you want to act in an ethical manner is often being promoted by the value system that you hold. The vision and the mission of your organization and the values that your organization believes in is the one that can make your organization to strive for more ethical acts, and also make your organization in the long run a very, very promising and a role model kind of an organization, which any organization in the world could look up to you and say that if at all we want to be an organization, we want to grow like them, we want to do like them. So if we want to reach that particular level and do that, it's very important that everybody within the organization adopts these very good measures as such. Okay, so I'm going to stop with this. If you have any questions, you can ask me. When we come back, we will finally wind up with how to finally build an ethical organization, and then we'll move into ethical theories. So that's very interesting because over the last 3,000, 4,000 years, we've had so many of them who've come and spoken about different theories. What is that you can do, and how is that you can apply these in overcoming ethical dilemmas? So that's very interesting. So that will also help us to open up the discussion and also have some good points to see how we can engage with this. All right, so any questions, anything that you would want to ask me here, anything that you wanted to ask me during the last 1 hour? Okay, Thomas. All right, then if there are no questions, then we'll wind up, we'll end the class. Okay, thank you so much and have a good weekend. We'll meet next.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, and meet you next Saturday.